Good morning, everyone. I'm Ted Barber with Chittenden Group, and I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time out of your day to join us for our first webinar. We do quite a few seminars in person, but we're giving this webinar a chance. So I know we have some customers on the call, so I wanted to thank everyone for joining us and for partnering with us. And hopefully we have some soon-to-be clients on the call as well. So thank you for joining us as well. We have many from the Chittenden team on here. And I'm a little biased, but I think we have an awesome team who does a great job of providing proactive rather than reactive service. We also have some well-qualified speakers today, so we appreciate you guys sharing your expertise with us so we can learn a thing or two and improve our businesses. For those of you who aren't familiar with Chittenden Group, we are an independent insurance agency. We offer commercial and personal property and casualty insurance, as well as employee benefits and financial services. We're very proud to say that we're a fourth-generation company and have been in business since 1928. We enjoy getting to know our clients and their operations so we can provide the best service possible. And as I said, we typically do in-person seminars, but we wanted to give the webinar a try for convenience purposes. I'm sorry there's no buffet breakfast today, but we're going to give you guys some Bloody Marys next time. We'll set up a Bloody Mary bar, so we'll make it up to you. We put our seminar topics up for a vote, and workers' comp related topics usually rank at the top of the list. And we're happy to tackle this issue because we have a lot of workers' comp experts on our staff, a lot of former workers' comp underwriters and people with workers' comp backgrounds. So it's one of our areas of expertise for sure. They say workers' comp is one of your most controllable insurance or lines of insurance, and having a safety culture that starts at the top can prevent claims from happening and also drive your experience mod down. So today we're going to explore how we can become safer organizations, as well as HR-related challenges that companies face when dealing with workers' comp claims. And then lastly, we're going to tie it all together with an explanation of the experience mod, how the calculation works, and also what tools and services Chittenden can arm you guys with to help drive it down. So we hope you will enjoy, and also our next up, Sue is going to introduce our speakers so we can get it going. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. Good morning. My name is Susan. I'm the marketing director for the Chittenden Group, and we are thrilled to have you join us here for our very first webinar. Throughout the session, we have a dedicated Q&A segment between each of our speakers. So if you have any questions that come up, please post them. They'll be addressed in between each speaker. I will also be posing a couple of polls. Please answer those as well. These are to help ensure that our speakers touch base on any burning questions you may have or issues. And as a special thank you for attending today, we're offering a complimentary experience mod analysis. We hope you'll take advantage of this exclusive opportunity. Lastly, we kindly ask that you take a few moments after the webinar to respond to our email analysis for review of the webinar. Your feedback is invaluable, and it will help us design our next webinar and/or seminar. And we hope you enjoy the webinar. Now, first up, we have Sandy Morrow, who is a seasoned HR professional with over 25 years of experience, joining EANE in November of 2021. Her extensive corporate background includes leadership roles such as Vice President of Human Resources at Cartamundi North America and Director of HR of Fuel Cell Energy. Sandy has managed HR strategies for over 1,000 employees across the United States, Canada, Europe, and Asia, focusing on organizational alignments, talent acquisition, and centralizing HR services. She holds a bachelor's in management, SPHR, SCP certification since 2003, and is certified executive coach. Outside of work, Sandy enjoys family time, competitive tennis, and coaching. Welcome, Sandy.
Thank you very much, Susan. And thank you everyone for having me. I appreciate it. I've actually known Chittenden for a long time through the various associations that I have. So I just really appreciate the opportunity for EANE to be able to share our expertise with you. As Susan said, I have a long background in human resources, but I also have a long background in safety. One of the pleasures that I had throughout my career was partnering with safety professionals and learned, and our finance team as well, and learned so much about what the safety impact is on an organization. So a few things, that I'm going to kind of walk through here, and as Susan said, please don't hesitate to ask any questions that I might be able to answer for you. So how I view HR's role in safety. I think it starts with the right staff. I'm so sorry. It starts with the right staff. When you have that opportunity to bring in the right people with the right attitude, safety becomes part of the DNA of the organization, and it's sets those expectations. The role HR can play: investigating the injuries. What happened? Where did it happen? Why did it happen? And what can we do about it? I was extensively involved in claim management throughout my career, especially on the manufacturing side, whether it was working with our broker or inside of our organization from a finance perspective. So we'll go through that a little bit as well. HR has a responsibility in the reporting, leave of absence tracking, partnering on the return to work, and then also in the safety messaging and communication. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the legal risk. And I know one of the things, the questions that was asked of me today was to talk about that remote worker. So we'll be doing that as well. So when we talk about hiring the right staff, a clear job description is one of the most critical things that we can do to make sure that we hire the right person. So part of that job description is a well-defined essential requirement. And when we think about the essential requirements of the job, what we're talking about is not only the physical things, but also some of the cognitive things that we're looking for from an essential job function. Hiring to that, making sure that the individual is capable of doing the work, and also kind of what happens from a background. So part of the interviewing practices that we found was that it was important to ask questions in and around safety. When you have somebody who's in a safety sensitive position, or even those that are supporting the safety sensitive positions, do they have the right mentality? Are they on board with the culture of your organization? We did pre-employment backgrounds, physicals, background checks, and making sure that the individual was able to physically do the work. We know this can be really expensive sometimes in making that investment, but knowing up front and knowing when somebody comes into your workforce, whether they have something that may have happened in the past, where your medical professional can help you understand that if that person does have a previous back injury or a knee injury or something else, how that might play out in your workplace should they be put into that job. And then setting expectations. So when we think about, how we bring our employees on board, that onboarding process, that orientation process, making sure they understand what the culture is of your the safety culture is in your organization. And then we follow up with our new hires. So when we check in with our new hires, what happens is, when you kind of come to the end of the first week and you have a conversation with that new hire, the conversation is in and around: how are things going for you? Are you getting the right training? How are you being told and taught the safety practices in the organization? We found a lot of times with our onboarding, especially during high periods of hiring, that our managers were kind of skipping things as they were doing the onboarding. So having that onboarding checklist: how is the safety going to play out in the organization? Do they understand your emergency evacuation plan? Do they understand reporting all of your injuries, no matter how minor they might be, so that the organization can take a closer look? As far as investigations are concerned, I believe HR has a key role in how, when, and why injuries might have occurred. Work instructions: were procedures followed? Did the individual bypass a safety practice? What might the discipline process be connected with doing something like bypassing a safety practice? And then we always took a really close look at how tired was the employee. When we were working in very, very busy times, part of what happened was the employee was tired. They're working 10, 12-hour days, 6, 7 days in a row. How that plays out when it comes to, to doing the job well and doing it in a safe way. And then we always pull back from a continuous improvement perspective. So our goal when we were doing our investigations was how can we first engineer out the risk? and partnering with our engineers and partnering with our manufacturing folks, as well as just others. So we also had injuries that happened straight up in our office, right? Whether or not our employees were paying attention from a safety perspective, somebody who might have slipped and fell, banged into something. We had injuries in our kitchen that were definitely preventable. We had somebody get burned. There were different things that happened. So safety has to go across all of our organization. And then when it comes to claim management, so HR had the responsibility of filing the first report of injury with our carrier, and then we supported the claim management process, making sure the medical expenses and lost wages were accounted for, and then we also sat in on claim review and reserve setting. So we did claim review 4 times a year because of the level of injuries that we had. We were able to move to only twice a year, which was great. And then also that relationship with the adjuster. So HR had a responsibility when it came to fraud. If we thought that there was something going on, we kind of looked at the pattern, especially with somebody who had multiple injuries, which always seemed to happen on a Monday from our weekend warriors that suddenly became our workers' comp claims. And we also watched on the medical expense side, right? So when our employees, we controlled our claim management. We had good relationships with our adjusters and dedicated adjuster for us because of the claim management activity that we had. We were then able to go into the pool, we'll call it, in working with our claim management team, depending on who was underwriting our insurance for us. But those relationships, being able to have the conversation, being able to understand who the team was on our insurance side, so that we knew that if we, kind of raised our hand and said, we think we have a fraud claim, and then having the investigation that was done. And then how we manage reporting. So timely entry into the OSHA log. Depending on where I worked, I had a safety partner or I didn't have a safety partner. So either I owned the OSHA log or our safety partner owned the OSHA log. But HR was responsible for making sure the year-end reporting, making sure that OSHA log got published on February 1st. It stayed up there till the end of April, that it was properly signed. The data that came behind our OSHA log in the posting that we put up at the end of the year, all that payroll data, that was all on HR to make sure that we timely supported the organization. And then also knowing like what was going to happen. So when we took our claim management and our reporting, we correlated that to the financial impact of injuries. We participated in the ROI for prevention investment. So when our organization identified opportunities, especially to engineer out a risk, we we fully understood the financial impact of doing that. We also then looked at what was going to happen to our workforce. So we had, when I worked for Fuel Cell, we had a very manual operation in our manufacturing plant when we started out, which then turned into a lot of automation. That turned into us having to upskill our employees. So we needed to make sure that our employees, as the project plan was put into place and as our forward-looking impact plan was put into place, how are we going to make sure that our employees were ready from a workforce perspective and that they had the safety training that they needed in order to be able to work in that new environment that was going to come 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road. Leave of absence and return to work. Working for EA&E, we do an enormous amount of counseling when it comes to FMLA and tracking of leaves. Workers' comp is, just one of those components. So if your organization is running FMLA side by side on a workers' comp claim, many people don't realize that workers' compensation is actually not job protected. So if somebody goes out on workers' comp, what do you do about that? So having your employee understand what happens when they go out on leave, how are they going to return to work, what medical documentation do they need to provide back to the organization. And while we get a lot of that information from our workers' comp carrier, sometimes having a very close relationship with the employee also, it helps us to workforce plan. So if I know somebody's going to be gone for 8 weeks because they broke a bone, well, what's the return to work going to look like? Are they still going to be in therapy? Do we need to make an accommodation in order for them to come back? Light duty or full duty? A lot of times HR has an opportunity to influence our managers to be open-minded about light duty, getting that employee back to work, having them come back into your workforce and stay engaged versus going home, maybe being sad about their injury, maybe wondering whether or not, their injury could be the end of their career. I held hands with many, was a first aid responder and had a few injuries that happened that, you're talking to that person and they're like, oh my gosh, this is going to end my career here. And, that was a reality. But then how do we help them? How do we help them get back out into the workforce if they can't return to work within our organization? ADA accommodations, the effectiveness of an ADA accommodation, not having your managers have to live with that accommodation forever. How do you revisit that and make sure that when you come back to that employee, they're on the same page as you are? Messaging and communication. We should all have a clear policy about what our workers' comp, risks are, what our safety practices are, having early reporting, having prevention activities, safety walkarounds, being there for the organization, showing support. Our safety walkarounds was probably one of the best practices that we had, and we rotated our staff. So we didn't always go back to the same area. Eventually, you become a little you become a little less open to see what's really going on there. Talking to the employees, asking them, what do you see as a risk here? Help us understand. What do you need in order to do your job safely? And then that consistency, walking the talk, HR, all our supervisors, all the way up to our senior management. When we had our vice presidents walking around, they were part of our safety team. They were very committed to making sure that everyone in the organization knew that safety was a very high priority in our organization. And then best practices. So HR and the safety team and our managers, we used to stay close to what was going on in the industry. How did we, keep things fresh for our employees and making sure it stayed top of mind? We had various reward programs, and it was really about participation, safety ideas that came forward. We used to have the big board up on our wall, with so many days that no lost days, all of those things, staying in communication. But we didn't reward not having injuries. We rewarded early prevention. We rewarded the opportunities for us to continuously improve because we wanted to make sure that our employees didn't feel like they would be punished because now we lost the bonus because somebody reported an injury. It was far more important to us to make sure that we had the reporting so we could do something about it. Legal risk. So the employee relationship. So one of the things that we found that was really effective for us is when we had a strong relationship with our employee and we stayed in constant communication with them, made sure their bills were paid, their lost wages were timely managed, the employees stayed in a positive state and they were less likely to reach out for legal representation. While there were times legal representation was absolutely the right thing for the employee to do, the more we could talk to the employees, stay in close touch with them, and keep the lawyers out of it, the better we found that our relationship was with the employee. And then last but not least, talk a little bit about the remote worker. So adding language to your safety policy about remote work, where can work take place? What do you expect from a work area? Helping the employee and reminding them about trip hazards within. Where are they running their cords in their office? Do they even have dedicated space? And then also computer access and secure connectivity. So these are also risks to your organization. Not quite workers' comp, but we talk about, what is the risk from a computer perspective? And then also where can your remote work take place? So controlling the environment that your employee is in when they are a remote worker. Are they sitting on the beach somewhere and they've lost control of their environment? So having a policy that's very clear with your remote workers or your hybrid workers, if that's what they happen to be, but also think about the person who's on the road. How is your sales team managing their time when they're on the road? So they may be remote workers because they're on the road as a sales team, but are they following good safety practices when they're out on the road? Obeying speed limits, no cell phone usage, all those kinds of things so that you don't have those claims coming through as well. Susan, thank you so much for letting me share.
Oh, that was great. If anybody has any questions, please post them. I have posted one poll, which was the burning question that they wanted to have covered here, and strategies to reduce workers' compensation costs. It was the number one with 40% of those polled. And just so you know, Sandy and Javier and Helen, we now have another poll out, which is a question: have you ever experienced a workers' comp fraud case? And so far it's 100% yes. So, oh, 100% no. That's kind of shocking to me. I would assume it would have been the other way. But we'll leave that out for another 8 minutes. I'm leaving the polls up for 10 minutes, just so you know. And if anybody has any questions after Sandy speaks that come up in the rest of the conversation, please just post them. I will get them to her. So without further ado, thank you, Sandy. Without further ado, if I can, um, next up is Javier Robles. He is a seasoned health and safety professional with 20 years of experience across highway, infrastructure, commercial, and residential construction. He is bilingual in Spanish and English. He excels in managing high-risk projects and ensuring compliance with OSHA, EPA, and DOL regulations. Javier is adept at hazard control, risk reduction, and OSHA record keeping with expertise in platforms like ISNET, World, iAuditor, and HCSS. He has successfully overseen major projects including federal and Army Corps of Engineers clean water infrastructure initiatives, and is a certified lead and asbestos abatement supervisor, well versed in environmental standards. Javier, please join us.
Has anyone experienced accidents or injuries? And a lot of times they're openly willing to discuss about an experience they observed or their own injuries. And we always take note as an onboarding management. We take note of the highlights and the recorded moments of an onboarding to then share with a safety committee, which is another level of management and safety that you would always want to have in a company, is a safety committee that has the opportunity to review incidents, speak with HR to make sure that we're applying the effective measures and have the right documents in place. It's almost a collective workforce, and it's a team effort. And absent of any manager, HR personnel, or a safety committee member, it's actually a disadvantage. So making sure you have all parties involved and communication is open. And then once we go into the onboarding, just understand that the onboarding is considered training. You're training them on your standards of practice, all your levels of hazard awareness, and some of your standards of practice in just your protocols of your company. So making sure that's understood clearly and that there's a sign off that it's been clearly communicated to the employee and it's fully understood. Because often, as you know, there are, what I would refer to workman comp career criminals that for whatever reason or purpose, they want to go on vacation, or they want to visit their country, or they just prefer to side on that side of life and become these type of individuals that are purposely getting injured, that we're adopting pre-existing injuries from other companies. And that onboarding and that review with the safety committee of your onboarding and who your employees are soon to be is very key, because within the efforts in management, then you're able to decipher, is this a keeper? Is this someone that we will use temporarily, and make a decision, and a just decision at that. You often then have a chance to review their training and create a training matrix where it records the history of their training and how often that training will expire. And we would then need to provide that training to maintain that competency in the field and that certified individual able and competent to do his job. That training matrix is an important key because it communicates. Someone that has a lot of certifications, they're very prideful and serious into their career, and they are having another level of goals toward their career. For some that are generally just have the certifications that are just required and often allow them to expire, that as well can communicate that this individual may need some more training or corrective coaching to help them bring them up to the standards of your company. So moving along, we also then in the field, it's a good practice and standard of practice is to make sure that all your incident response, rescue response, evacuation response plans are in writing in 2 languages, if need be, or readily available. For accidents in vehicles, we like to put a step-by-step procedure of how you should respond to a accident. Get the information from the other driver, make sure the responders are contacted, make sure that you get copies or contact information. And it helps sometimes in a moment of distress where an employee may be nervous for several reasons, and this guide helps them, and it also helps minimize the lack of communication or information that later on we would provide to HR to then help navigate this claim back to a positive point. If that were an injury as well, it's a good idea to develop incident response plans and have a relationship with a local urgent care clinic where they know that it's very clear that your company prefers first aid procedures and treatment if possible, and when not, then defer to an emergency or a recommended doctor. How important that is, it's very important for your EMR and your MOG rating, because most commonly when you go to a hospital, you will follow up with workman's comp, and they sometimes are protocoled to give certain treatments that for first aid injuries are sometimes not necessary. A lot of urgent care are equipped to treat a lot of the injuries that happen on the job sites, contusions, abrasions, lacerations, which are for our industry sometimes common. So you want to make sure that that urgent care that you create that relationship with is up to how you prefer to provide treatment, and minimize the days away from work. Our ultimate goal would be to make sure that once that injury occurs, to provide a step-by-step or a 10-step process for everyone in management to understand and apply when a person is injured or a worker is injured in the field. And that step-by-step procedure would then bring back the individual to full recovery with no days away from work. I encourage all managers and supervisors and key personnel to always create a list of light duty items in their departments that they can offer when light duty is offered from the physician or the urgent care. Moving along, making sure there's clear communication and follow-up with all correspondence from urgent care, and a follow-up from management to the employee just to say, hey, we miss you. How you doing? How you're recovering? Is everything okay? Is there anything we can do? Because that connection with your employee, it really matters. It really resonates to them buying into your safety program and saying, yes, my company really cares. And sometimes that goes a long way in the field, and it deciphers and weeds out a lot of bad apples. Including with that, you want your review, a review of an accident, you want a review of an incident, you want to share that with your safety committee, HR, and management, and see what were the leading indicators, the root cause, and the 5 whys. Why did this happen? How could we have changed it? And what can we put in place now to prevent it from occurring again? And you can have initiative. I would like to use recognition programs where it recognizes the hours an employee works safely. And you can have milestones where there are trinkets or small items that would complement the worker's ability to work safe. And being in the field, always getting a hat, a shirt, a lanyard for a tool, a small item, an engraved item that shows that I've been working so many hours safe really motivated me and the teams to want to continue to work safe, to get these little items, coffee cups that we can brag about. And it really went a long way. And that is also part of your safety program. It does complement everyone as a whole and everyone in management. And as I was saying, when you have these incidents and these accidents that occur, having a follow-up incident review meeting with your staff is very important, because it also eliminates injuries and accidents from occurring when they can be prevented. Know that at times you will have some accidents and injuries that will occur from misconduct, and making sure you have a disciplinary action is very important. A disciplinary plan. OSHA is all about companies having disciplinary plans, because it tells them that they're mitigating their risks and coaching their employees to do the right thing and be safe in the field. So making sure that you have that in place is very key to a safety program. Moving right along to your incidents, going to more emergencies, offering mock trainings and making sure you have sign-offs on that. And you can do that yearly or quarterly, where with your employees, there's a day and a time, it's announced, it's notified to all that we'll have a mock drill, and how that initiates, whether it's a phone call or a sound of a horn, where everybody is supposed to jump into their roles and their positions and mock a emergency situation, whether it's evacuating the job site or whether it's responding to an injury. Having these yearly mocks and sharing them with all workers will get everyone on the same understanding of how to respond to certain unexpected accidents and injuries, which also helps promote safety. And sometimes you can complement that with a teams building, have a facilitator there while the opportunity is there that all staffs are there. It's a good thing to then critique what could have been done better and where we need to improve, so that in the event of an accident or an injury, we are doing the right thing and everyone's falling in place. Concluding to that, getting individuals on the job site first aid trained. Then you can have first aid responders on many and multiple jobs, and those first aid injuries that occur often on the job that sometimes don't get reported, they have the ability to provide that treatment and contain it from becoming worse. Then it also helps making sure that it's reported and it gets back to HR in a timely fashion, because that's also important. The timing of how all of this occurs in the event of an injury or an accident is crucial, and all management should know the time factors that apply to responding to an injury or an accident, and getting back to HR especially is as important as responding to and providing treatment. And that's pretty much all I have right now, Sue. Thank you. I hope I didn't take up too much time. I was trying to contain
No,
it.
it's great. It's great information. I did pose a question. So can you give us, say, the top 5 must-cover topics or practices that we should all be incorporating into our onboarding process?
Yes, you should definitely how to report and how the company expects calling out injuries and accidents to be reported in a timely fashion. explaining the hazards associated with their work and their work scope, and the expectations of the company's mission statement and core values to be also shared with the individual to make sure they understand they may have worked with a previous employer that may not have the same level of safety, and you would like to know that, because once you share a mission statement or a core value to an individual, they will respond. They will tell you, hey, I've never heard of this, and this is outside the box. And, you know, seeing something and saying something and having little acronym commands in the field also helps, like 20, 20, 20, every 20 minutes, take 20 seconds to look 20 feet around you. And there are a lot of different other slogans and things you can put together with your program that can make it fun. And making it fun for an individual is super key. Because if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And for some of these guys that are really swinging hammers and sweating every day, you got to give them something to love to come back to.
That's great. Thank you so much. I did get a question regarding if we are going, I know, so just for everybody's information, we are going to be sending the slide decks that are presented here today afterwards, and we're also going to be sending handouts afterwards in a follow-up email. So stay tuned for that. Thank you, Javier. I appreciate your time and your help in explaining this really deep area of not only safety, but also cost savings. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Next up, we have our very own Helen Zepperzella. She is our service coordinator and our account exec extraordinaire. She is a seasoned commercial insurance expert with over 20 years of experience, specializing in workers' compensation as a certified risk manager, or CRM, and licensed property and casualty producer. She leverages her deep knowledge of practice, coverage, and market dynamics to develop strategies that enhance clients' profitability and risk management. Helen's expertise spans underwriting, loss control, and claims management, and she has successfully managed large accounts and complex insurance programs. Known for her analytical skills and leadership, Helen is dedicated to providing tailored insurance solutions and guiding organizations through the many complexities of risk. Welcome, Helen.
Thank you, Sue. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. Welcome to today's webinar on experience modification factor and its impact on workers' comp premiums. We'll be covering several key topics that can help you understand how the EMOD affects your company's premiums, the role of risk management, and how Chittenden can support you managing your mod. Here's a brief outline of what we'll cover. Overview of the experience mod factor. We'll explain what the EMOD is, why it matters to your organization. The impact of the EMOD on workers' comp premiums. We'll dive into how EMOD influences the cost of workers' comp insurance. And risk management's role. Discover how effective risk management strategies can positively impact your experience mod. And then we'll get into a question and answer at the end as well. What is an experience modification? First of all, it goes by some different names. Excuse me. Bear with me. There we go. So some people call it an EMR, as Javier did. Some call it EMOD. Sometimes it's an XMOD. But it all means the same thing. The EMOD compares a company's past workers' comp claims to similar employers in size in the industry. It's a formula that considers the ratio between expected losses in your industry and the losses that an organization actually incurred, as well as both the frequency and SIS, which is expected losses times D ratio. And both the expected loss rate and the D ratio are annual rates that come out and are specific to the state. Expected excess losses, calculated by subtracting expected primary loss from the expected loss. and actual primary loss, the total of all claims less than 20,000. So this is what's called the split point, and it takes your actual loss and splits it in between primary and excess. And every year, the split point changes. It used to be $5,000 way back when, and now it is $20,000. And this is for 2024. Next year, it could increase as well. Actual losses is the sum of both the primary and actual excess losses. And then the ballast value is a stabilizing value that stabilizes mods by moving them closer to a 1. And the weighting value ranges from a 0.14 to a 0.88, with smaller companies focusing more on primary losses and larger companies reflecting excess losses. So here's a sample experience rating worksheet. I'm sure you've all seen one. I just wanted to point out that it does have the 3 years of losses. This is a rating effective date of 2/1/2024. So it includes the policies 2020, 2021, and 2022. The first column shows your classification, your workers' comp classification. And then the second column shows the ELR, expected loss rate, and D ratio. This is your audited payroll here. And then the calculation does the expected losses and expected primary losses for your industry for each classification. This section here shows your claim data, your company's claim data. So typically you would see the claim number in this column, the injury code. Important to remember that injury code 6 are medical only, and they're discounted by 70% in the calculation. This column is whether it's open or final, and a final means it's closed. And here's your actual incurred losses and actual primary losses. So even though this is a medical only showing it's going in at full value, down the road in the calculation it does get discounted by 70%. So they had a pretty good year this year. They had 3 claims in this year, and about 4,000 in losses. And in this year here, there was a $36,000 loss, and as you can see, that split point was applied here, and so only 20,000 went into the primary loss column. And this is actual totals and calculation of this experience modification. I'm not going to get into the weeds of it. We are going to be sending you a handout with the exact calculation and step-by-step details of how that works, as well as an exact explanation of the experience modification in every column in there. But just for purposes, you can see down here, the totals are for actual and expected. Here are the totals, and it's actual divided into the expected to come up with an experience modification. In this case, it's a credit mod of a 0.75. How does EMOD factor affect your workers' comp premium? So once the EMOD is calculated, the insurance carrier uses the factor as a multiplier in your workers' comp premium. A mod less than a 1 reduces the premium amount you pay, and the lower your mod, the greater the reduction. And as your experience mod factor increases, so does your premium. So the manual premium calculation is annual payroll times workers' comp rate per 100. In example 1, we have a debit mod of a 1.25, and you apply that to the manual premium of 100,000, and the premium you pay in this case would be $125,000. So you're paying $25,000 more because of that debit mod. In example 2, we have a credit mod, same manual premium of 100,000. In this case, you have a 0.80 mod, and the premium you pay is 80,000. So you can see it has a pretty big impact on your premium. What can you do? Risk management's role. So a lot of these themes are going to be the same as Sandy and Javier mentioned. Claims management program to regularly review claims, Make sure you're getting to the root cause, and then putting fixes and improvements in place to address those. Incident investigation, investigate both accidents and near misses to identify trends. I believe an accident investigation program, formalized program, is very important. Safety programs, implement and update a safety training program that addresses your high-risk areas. Safety culture, safety starts at the top. It's important that upper management get involved as well as actively engage your employees. Return to work program. Creating a return to work program that accommodates injured workers can really boost morale, but also reduce your indemnity costs. If you remember, every claim, every dollar that you pay stays on your experience for 3 years. So by bringing someone back to work and reducing the amount of the indemnity cost, that will affect you and reduce your experience modification in the long run. Wellness programs. Healthy workers recover faster, reducing claims. And pre-work screening, as both Sandy and Javier mentioned, physical screening process is great to ensure that new hires are capable of performing the jobs and reducing injury risk. So by focusing on these areas, claims management, accident prevention, and injury management, you can improve your EMOD and reduce your premium. How can Chittenden help? Well, we help our clients develop a specific risk management plan to target exposures and target claim trends, which will reduce your experience mod. We also provide an experience mod analysis and projection, an evaluation of your loss history, the impact on premium, and then the projection of future mods so that you know for budgeting purposes what to expect. Review of the EMOD, we ensure that the class, loss, and payroll information is accurate. And then most importantly is claims management. Ensure that your reserves are not overstated. We maintain frequent and proactive communications with the adjusters so they actually work on your claims and pay attention to them. And then we make sure that the correct reserves go into the unit stat filing, which is typically 6 months after policy expiration date. So with that being said, I encourage all of you to review your current experience modification, reach out to Chittenden if you need any assistance in that. Feel free to reach out to me directly after the webinar if you have any specific questions or need further clarification. And thanks again for your time today. And Chittenden is here to assist you. And I'll turn it back to Sue now for Q&A.
Great. Thank you so much, Ellen. I appreciate it. So we did get a question that is regarding handouts, as I mentioned before, and one of the two things we're looking for, or maybe both overall, is that you mentioned an incident investigation structure. Helen, do we have a template for that? And is there a template available from any of you for the incident response plan that we can send to our participants?
Yes, we do. We have an accident investigation form as well as a process that we can send out.
Perfect. Let's make sure we do that because that was brought up. And I did want to go over the results from our poll. So interestingly enough, I polled who in the company is primarily responsible for managing your workers' comp, and HR came in at 60%. Everyone came in at 40%. The other options were area supervisors and safety committees. So in all of your experience, I think we're at 70 years combined between the three of you. What is your recommendation for who should be primarily responsible for managing workers' comp? Anyone can take that.
I'll share, Sue. So, I think it depends on the size of your organization. So I was privileged to work in larger organizations where we actually had a dedicated safety person that I could partner with. But I also worked for a really small manufacturer early in my career, and I was it. So I think what's important is the attitude and the ownership. Whatever role is, can be designated in your organization, but they have to really own it, take responsibility for it, and make sure that there's excellent follow through and consistency in the way that your policies are put into place and the way that you manage the claims. Javier?
I agree. I agree with that. And having that designated personnel can vary depending on the size. And just making sure that in the review meetings, in the process, that there's a buy-in from all and from parties involved, managers, owners, HR, whether you have a assigned safety professional or not. He would be a big part of it as well, because I'm sure he's conducted the investigation, which in lieu can help the conversation in those meetings and help that individual gather the information needed, because it can be a task at times.
Sure.
Wonderful. So I am going to leave it open for Q&A for a few moments. We haven't had a lot of Q&A, but the polls have been interesting to me. And again, the other poll question we asked was, have you ever experienced a workers' comp fraud case? And the results were actually surprising to me. 38% were yes, and 63% were no. So that's kind of a nice surprise for what I typically think. And then, of course, the other one was controlling our expenses, which we know we covered quite a bit, and it will be also included in the handouts we send everybody through email. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to mention that we didn't cover, or any questions?
Susan, I have one thing to share, and perhaps Helen or Ted could take this. One of the things that we did was we partnered very closely with our carrier. They came in once a year, twice a year. They did evaluations of our workplace as part of the services, and just as a whole nother second set of eyes from a risk mitigation perspective. So perhaps one of you could speak to the group here about that partnership that they could engage in, if depending on their carrier.
Sure. Yeah, we actually partner with. We do lean on the carrier whenever possible. Sometimes we will have Travelers or Hartford, offer their expertise in regards to safety and inspections. But we kind of prefer to lean on safety partners like Goggin. We partner with a few different safety firms. Sometimes it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's you don't want the carrier to know too much in some cases, because they can pull it against you and they need to correct this or that, which is a good thing, but they might give you an unrealistic or short fuse to fix certain areas. So I think it's kind of nice to have a partner like Goggin. Javier can do an inspection and come up with different recommendations, and you can fix it on your own timeline. So that's one of the pros of having a third party not related to the carrier or to OSHA, for that matter, federal or con OSHA. But I don't know if Helen or Javier, if you have any comments on that, want to add to that.
Yeah, it's very important to have that collaboration with the provider, and they have always had many resources and a lot of recommendations that would assist what the safety professional would try to achieve in the field, whether that's having a safety day yearly or quarterly, where you're covering all the safety protocols, evaluations, and so on. And having that biased opinion and being able to sort of say, hey, it's just not us trying to cover ourselves. It's what our providers have been trying to offer and made accessible to all of us. And that collaboration is key.
Yeah. A lot of our clients have taken advantage of the mock OSHA inspection, one of the services that we provide, and they found it very valuable and insightful.
I got a question first. It's probably an HR Sandy question, but I know bringing an injured worker back to work as quickly as possible. I know it's always ideal. Keep the mod down. I mean, for a host of different reasons. But what if you have a bad apple? It's a somewhat common question. I think Javier mentioned, workers' comp career criminals. Unfortunately, those types of people do exist and they game the system. So what if you have someone out on comp and they might fit into that bucket? Maybe not the best apple out there. What are your options? And I guess what are the risks of not offering light duty? And you probably don't want to lay someone off, but can you say, this position's been filled? If it's been an extended period of time, you want to, you've got to do what's best for the business. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that a bit.
Sure. And it's not an unusual question. We hear it also with leave of absences. It's like, do you really have to have them come back? We really didn't want them to come back. Or you have somebody who's filling in for them and they end up knocking it out of the park and they're like, I really don't want Ted back, right? And you're like, yeah. So from a risk perspective, there is an anti-retaliation statute for somebody who files a workers' comp claim. So just letting somebody go because you don't want them back, there can be risk there. And then there's also on the backside, Ted, as you know, that if somebody doesn't return to work and their injury has permanency connected with it, the cost of that individual, the cost of the claim does go up exponentially. So we hear it a lot on the HR side. Somebody got hurt and then, the manager rolls their eyes and says, I really don't want them back. We also, can see that, and I think Javier kind of alluded to this a little bit, that if somebody is a chronic workers' comp claim filer, they usually have something else going on. There's usually a performance issue. They probably have an attendance issue. They don't just pop up as, on the workers' comp side. There's usually a little bit more smoke around the individual. So what we encourage is instead of using the workers' comp as a way to take the person out of the organization, to really be proactive up on the front side when you start to see those patterns emerge with somebody, and go out, kind of really proactively look into from a performance perspective on what else can be used as a way to encourage that person to be no longer in your organization, whether you performance them out or you just say, you know what, there's too many policy violations here. But as far as letting somebody go, as we said before, workers' comp is not a protected leave. So if you decided that somebody couldn't return to work or their injury was to the point where they can't return to the workplace safely, yes, then you can separate with them. But we always encourage very good conversation with your carrier and also to consult with legal counsel just to make sure that you're on solid ground before you separate.
Talk to customers about paying small medical claims out of pocket. We try to encourage people to report even the small claims because, for a few reasons, the carrier gets a discount on the medical bills, and they get factored into your mod calculation at a fraction, at 30% of the amount. It usually doesn't move the needle much in terms of how your mods. And then you can also have liability if you don't report it becomes something worse down the road. So I think that's the biggest reason why you want to report all claims. What's your stance, Javier or Sandy?
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. Having every claim reported, and even if it's minor, and it was just, it was right within our platform, right? It was just first aid, or and that was where, from a safety perspective, we were able to take a look at the trend. Because sometimes, that I just went to I was in the first aid room and I just got a Band-Aid. Well, 3 days later it gets infected because the person, didn't care for it the way they should have, or, whatever. That early reporting and making sure from a conversation perspective. So whenever we did claim review, that was part of the conversation was, we were incredibly proud that we did have that no later than 48 hours requirement of filing. And we made sure that our carrier was always in the loop about what was going on. Agreed.
Yeah, they said the first 2 weeks of a claim are so important because it can get out of control pretty quickly.
Yeah, especially if there needs to be an investigation, right, Javier? Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree. I've had a situation where a claim did not get reported. It was a laceration, and the individual didn't provide the correct treatment. That's why having a manager on site with first aid treatment trained is important, because then once that's reported to the foreman or the manager, they can be their first line of treatment in providing that treatment and documenting and reporting back to HR or claims manager. Hey, we have a report of an injury. Now the follow-up starts, and we can then come back and say, hey, how you're feeling, and always keep it first aid at level, rather than the gentleman didn't provide his own first aid treatment, didn't report it, and now he's getting suggested for surgery to clean out a cyst he developed in his knee. So yes, could it have been prevented? Absolutely, with having the first aid responders on site, and that's easy. Having an urgent care clinic that you can have that individual visit, no matter how minor the injury, just for a check in the box to assure that he's okay, because he isn't a physician. He may think it's okay, but he may be looking at something he doesn't understand. So having someone put a set of eyes that can recognize a potential first aid getting more serious and prevent it is way important. And that's why we encourage that if you have a program where all incidents, no matter how minor, are reportable, and when you do not report it, there has to be some corrective coaching or corrective actions that resonates and echoes to the workers. You must report something, or they're going to write you up or put a file that you failed to follow company protocols. And that would hopefully encourage individuals to report incidents, no matter how minor. That's my take on it, because it could get out of hand fairly quickly.
Again, I thank you on behalf of the Chittenden Group, to our speakers for offering us their expertise for this morning, and to all the attendees for taking time out of their day to learn more about workers' compensation and what you can actually do to put some effect on controlling your claims and your premiums. And everybody have a great day.